what exactly that we mean inner child healing.
There is an inner child within their parent which is playing around at that point of time.
As you said, as you mentioned, that they would not be talk about their emotions with anyone just like that. Maybe some of them would probably talk with their friends. Nearly 72% of Indian children are going through this emotional abuse and this neglect. Any traumatic stages that anybody new to that stage, new to that steps, what is the one first step would be safe? First safe step by someone can take toward on the healing. What would be that? Hey, welcome back to my another meaningful episode of my Pod Talk, Voice Inside You and in Life. I'm Ashwini J from Bengaluru. So now you all know my Pod Talk purpose and the intentions of driving this. It's very clear that how my Pod Talk, my conversations with my all guests, how that adds value to you and to your life and to my Pod Talk. So that's very pivotal and very critical and adds value to me as well. So keeping that in mind, I ensure that we explore on all real human experiences, the great stories, the life journeys, personal and professional growth journeys, and workplace challenges, and everything that we try to add value to our life. We learn each other, we get inspired each other from every conversations. Yes, so even today's episode is one of the most universal yet often unspoken, unheard, and experiences. Yes, I am talking about that episode 6 that's about trauma and inner child healing. And when we say trauma, we all carry that some or the other traumas in our past lives or maybe past stories in our journey, in our experiences. And some of us leave that visible marks, some of people will be hidden with invisible wounds inside. And that quietly shape with how we think, how we act, how we speak, and how we connect with the world. So sometimes they show up, in our workplaces, sometimes they show up in relationships, and even in the way that we look at ourselves. And you know what? I want to tell you this. If you ever felt that weight, you're not alone. And I tell you something, one more important thing here. Healing is not only possible, but it's a transformative. It's all on us how we work towards on transformative. And in these conversations, we're going to explore how that starts from understanding, nurture, and reconnect with our inner selves. So let's dive in to have these conversations with my most special guest of this episode 6. I'm stoked to welcome my today's special guest of this episode, Akshara Damle. Akshara, he's a celebrity psychologist, TEDx speaker, international trainer, and author with over a decade of experience in a mental health space. Also, he's founder of Mano Samvada Vishisht Wellness Platforms. So this is basically completely dedicated to emotional well-being and holistic growth. What makes Akshara unique? Well, this is the thing. He blends his psychology insights, science with his intuition. And not only just psychology, he's also an NLP coach. He is a graphologist and a professional tarot reader. So, with all of these diverse expertise skills, he's a spiritual insights that's empower every individual and organizations. Akshara, when I say he's a celebrity psychologist, he most of the mental health support providing to high profiles individuals like in sports, cricket team players, or in entertainment or for businesses profiles. Well, with that, having said that, his all of these passions spans across these realms, and that's make him so powerful in the field of emotional wellness. So I'm glad having him here on my podcast. So let's dive in this conversation. What we're going to have this conversation, the main objective is that this our episode of trauma and inner child healing, it's more about what is it the trauma that we carrying out in our life, and how we tap into that, how we recognize that, what is it that mean when we mean that inner child healing, and how we recognize that those patterns and behavior. So there are many different on terms of psychological and biological mechanisms that we build, that we talk about, that we touch upon. There are many different segments and aspects that we also do talk about on these terms. So let's dive in these conversations and let's hear out how we can recognize those things and how we can improve ourselves from inside of soul as well. All right. Hello, Akshara. Thank you so
Hello,
much.
Ashwini.
I'm glad having you here on my podcast. Thank you for accepting my invite.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure for me to be here.
So, Akshara, thank you so much. Akshara, our discussion today is more about on trauma and inner child healing.
Right.
So, see, when we say that trauma, it's very foundation that most of us we are aware that it's a kind of a response that we react to an event when we find something like unexpected circumstances, or maybe like accident, or maybe something disaster, or maybe some sort of you know unexpected event that distress our mental health, something that bothering, something that damaging our physical, maybe psychologically, or maybe emotionally. That's all of that that builds and develop the trauma. So said that trauma is something that not everybody uh, develops the trauma stage. It's sometimes uh, it might probably stays for a short while for some people, but for some people it may probably stay for the longer term, or maybe entire lifespan. So it depends on the severity cases, and each individual that what they have gone through in their life. So when we're talking about on this trauma, again, there are three different types of trauma: acute, complex, and chronic. All of these comes under the PTSD. There are something called, we term it as a CPTSD as well, right? If I'm not wrong. PTSD and CPTSD. There are many different complex PTSD as well. Now we are going to talk about something more deeper on that, but before that, let's touch upon on the inner child healing. What exactly that we mean inner child healing, and from there probably we'll take it up because trauma and inner child there is a connection. So yes, we'll take it way forward, and maybe you can start from that conversation. What
Sure.
exactly that we mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I think we are setting up a good foundation in terms of understanding what this is,
Yeah.
and then maybe we will go on building upon the conversation. Whenever I talk or whenever I say that I do inner child healing, a lot of people think that this is for children. So a lot of
Mm.
parents get excited. Oh, then can I bring my child to you?
Oh.
But actually, what I see is there is an inner child within their parent which is playing around at that point of time. Probably where the maybe the parent was not or the maybe the parent had some traumatic incident or something unmet which could have been met at that point of time in their childhood comes out in different ways. So, broadly, to understand inner child healing, uh, so as we grow from our childhood, but from the time of birth, as we grow over a period of time, we will have different kinds of experiences. It can be great, good experiences. It can be very bad, pathetic experiences, disgusting experiences, or certain situations which can create anger or other triggers, and so on.
Right.
Now, what we look at, see, generally, if good things are happening, it can create a functional pattern in a person, which is good, which means that those patterns which are functional to that person, which doesn't create any problem or any kind of hurdle for that person. But at the same time, whenever there is a negative situation or negative incident that is happening, it need not be extreme traumatic incident like a catastrophe. A lot of
Mm.
people think that trauma refers to only when there is a catastrophic incident or very, very intense incident. But in the context of inner child, we also say that if the parent was negligent to
Mm.
to the child, that can also create a trauma for the child of being ignored. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
So there are different kinds of wounds, emotional wounds as we call, that a
Mm.
child can have. It can be a
Mm.
neglect wound, it can be uh, an ignorance because of ignorance, or it could be there could be several
Several cases.
such reasons why a child can have that wound. However, many times children will not know that they can express these wounds or their agony.
Mm.
Or sometimes it also happens that they do not have that space to express, even when they want to express. And at the end of the day, they end up saying that, okay, this is how it is going to be, and they start accepting the things as they are. Again, when I say they are accepting, basically they learn to cope with the situation. It is not about the spiritual acceptance of things. As a
Mm.
child, you will learn to cope with that situation. How? By suppressing those negative emotions. Because you cannot live with the negative emotion throughout. Correct? You
Got it.
cannot
Mm.
operate on a normal basis if you're carrying a very negative emotion like anger or sadness or disgustedness or feeling pathetic and so on. So they suppress that emotion to cope with it. And even though they may end up forgetting those things as they grow older,
Mm.
in one or other way, whatever the suppressed emotion that exists in the subconscious or unconscious will
Mm.
keep triggering one or other behavior or emotional pattern in the person. So
Mm.
that is where the person gets into those dysfunctional patterns. For
Mm.
example, if a person has developed trust issues in the childhood, and the person may keep or continue to have trust issues even as an adult, correct?
Mm.
Even without any significant incident happening in the adulthood,
Mm.
correct? So, where is this coming from? The answer is it is coming from the childhood trauma. Correct?
Mm.
So, similarly, a person may feel or may have inferiority
Mm.
even when they are doing really well. In fact, I have looked at or I have treated some of the people who were in CXO level position, who were
Mm.
really doing well in their
Okay.
occupation, in the role
Mm.
that they had taken up, but still they carried that kind of sense of insecurity. And
Mm.
more than insecurity, it was more of inferiority about what will or whether I am good enough to
Mm.
perform in this role, even when they have been proving themselves to be doing very well in the role. So these are coming because of the childhood experiences. Now, whenever we get an experience, what happens is we create a meaning and we believe that it is true,
Mm.
because one incident has given that meaning and we believe that it is true, and it becomes a pattern in us.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
And
Mm.
even as an adult, we will continue to carry these emotional baggages. And as a result of it, we only create hurdles in on our way,
Mm.
because the way we look at the future is based on the experience that we had in the past. So unless we
Absolutely.
address
Mm.
the past negative experiences, future cannot look bright. That is where inner child healing becomes very, very important and very, very crucial, because that's when you can liberate yourself from the baggage and you can create better future for yourself. So that is how inner child healing works. So, in a layman's term, I would also call it as a psychosurgery, because
Mm. Yeah.
we will not know where it is leading to. We have to cut open the emotional wound with
Mm.
whatever the dysfunctional pattern that they have, and then go back to the root of it, wherever it started, through the medium of hypnosis. I mean, tap the unconscious or subconscious and then take out those triggers, heal them, and then bring them back and stitch. Opening, going inside, and coming out, as well as stitching. All the four processes are very, very important and uh, very critical, because if the therapist is not stitching them properly, then the patient
It
or the
it
client may find it difficult to deal with it later, because those were all suppressed emotions which the person didn't remember consciously. And because we did the inner child healing, everything has come out. And if we have not been able to heal it properly and stitch it back, then that can keep triggering the person. That is where inner child healing becomes very tricky, but at the same time very effective tool.
So, speaking of this, Akshara, see these childhood trauma that what we are talking about, maybe this uh, before the age of 18, probably, all right. So, in before the age of 18, many children, as you said, as you mentioned, that they would not be talk about their emotions with anyone just like that. Maybe some of them would probably talk with their friends, with similar age people, or if not, they probably would not talk about it. So there's no room for them, unfortunately. So like that cases, the report says that nearly 72% of Indian children are going through this emotional abuse and this neglect. So the percentage of the report more on this emotional abuse on the children. Now, out of that, nearly about 54%, 54.2% of emotional abuse going through by women. Okay, and 14 to 29% of emotional abuse in the intimate relationships. Now, I'm
In
tell
the
you,
intimate relationship.
intimate
Okay.
relationships. Okay, now I'll tell you where I'm coming on the point. What could be the reasons for under reporting of this emotional abuse and that neglect compared to physical and sexual abuse?
Very well put, because see, understanding emotional abuse itself is a very difficult thing in the first place, compared to physical abuse or sexual abuse, because it's a physical act that happens, be
Hmm.
it right from hitting or
Yeah.
pinching or creating other pain,
Hmm.
hurt physically,
Hmm.
to going to the level of
Psychological.
assaulting
Hmm.
sexually.
Hmm. Hmm.
And again, sexual assault is not just physical thing, but it also includes verbal abuse and gender based abuse and so on.
Hmm.
But it is very evident for a
Hmm.
person to witness and
Hmm.
recognize that, okay, this is an abuse.
Hmm.
But emotional abuse is a very subtle way of
Yeah.
abuse, and a lot of people do not recognize that it is an abuse. I'll give you
Hmm.
some examples. Say, a mother telling her son or daughter, will you not do this for me because you're my daughter? Will you not do this for me because you're my son? Is also an abuse,
Correct.
because you are forcing upon your thoughts or your wishes or your ideas on your child,
Hmm.
in the pretext of you being their mother or them being your children. Okay,
Hmm.
that is also an abuse. Likewise, a husband asking a wife, will you not do this for me, or will you not leave this job because I am telling you? It comes out as, or it appears as, very caring or very concerned or very coming from a source of security
Hmm.
or protection and so on,
Hmm.
but it can also be an abuse.
Hmm.
Vice versa is also true. It can happen from a wife as well, that I am saying this, I am your wife, will you not take care of this because I am telling you, can also become an abuse.
Hmm.
But most of the times we do not recognize that these are the emotional abuse that we are going through. And as a result of that, what happens is we end up getting into a kind of repeated trauma in our life. And over a period of time, that kind of becomes a burden, and it
Hmm.
becomes very difficult for the person who is going through that abuse to keep going through it. And that's where it becomes a challenge later on. However, why it is underreported? Because initially they do not even recognize that it is an emotional abuse.
Hmm.
And once they recognize, it is too late. By then, it also gets into physical abuse or some other verbal abuse and other abuse, other forms of
Hmm.
abuse. And hence, again, when they report, it ends up becoming a report of physical abuse or verbal abuse or other sexual abuse and so on, but not about the emotional abuse. So that is one of the major reasons why emotional abuse is not generally spoken about or not reported enough.
Got it.
And one more
So,
thing,
hmm.
when we talk about child in the
Hmm.
definition or in the context of inner child healing,
Hmm.
we do not really reserve or restrict it to any age limit, because
Hmm.
whatever happened 3 days ago
Hmm.
can also create a trauma for me, and
Hmm.
3 days younger self of me is a child for the adult self today.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it is not age restricted. It can, I mean, because trauma can happen at any age, right?
True.
It
Yeah.
can, so we consider anything that is happening in the past. It can be yesterday, or say if I'm talking in the evening and if something has happened in the morning, that can also be considered as a inner child for the adult self
True.
of the current time. Yeah.
Good. Yes, Akshara. So these are the long term of psychological effects of this emotional abuse compared to the physical or sexual abuse. What are the those long term psychological effects? Is what another point.
See, a lot of people do not recognize that it is important to get themselves treated,
Hmm.
and especially doing inner child healing is so important because people think that this is what normal is.
Hmm.
Like, a lot of people have started saying that depression has become a new normal after
Hmm.
COVID, or anxiety has become a new normal. Again, it is not new normal.
Yeah.
Basically, it is just like, say, if out of 100 people, if 90 people have diabetes, can we say that it is normal? No, it is not.
It
It
is
is
not
critical stage.
critical
It is an
stage.
acute
Yes.
stage. Correct? So likewise, even in case of mental health, if out of 100 people, 90 people or 80 people are going through something, be it anxiety or be it depression or be it any other emotional baggage,
Hmm.
that is not normal. But we end up saying that everyone is going through it. It's not just me. So it is okay to have it. That is one of the fundamental problem that one has to address for
Yeah.
oneself. Apart from that, there is one more thing that we need to look at, that because of the abuse that we carry or continue to carry within ourselves,
Hmm.
another major challenge happens is we actually lose the real ability or real capability of ourselves,
Hmm.
because these baggage creates hurdles on our path. Apart
Hmm.
from that, we can also, or we have also seen varieties of cases where, because of not getting addressed with the traumatic incident, people have also developed different physical ailments, be
Hmm.
it frozen shoulder or neck pain or lower back pain, or
Hmm.
even irritable bowel syndrome, fibromyalgia, myositis. There are so many such physical symptoms or physical disorders which have
It can
also
cause.
resulted
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
of intense level of stress or
Hmm.
traumatic emotional baggage. So it is very, very important to address them, and then only one can really lead a life full of freedom.
Absolutely, Akshar. I really liked your responses on this point. It was quite profound. So speaking of this childhood traumas, and I think yes, sometimes this carries to age, and it impacts in a different way at adult life. So when it comes to that behavior patterns or in the decision making, maybe in the relationships, in everything, all of this it impacts in different ways. So why do these unresolved of the issues in a childhood age, why it should resurface later time? What is the reason behind of that? I mean, even if it's resurfacing later, like without even realizing it, somewhere in the consciously subconsciously it comes
Sure.
to the light.
Okay, I'll give you an example. Again, this need not be any gender specific thing. It can be gender
Mm,
neutral. But since I'm quoting one of the cases that I have seen, I'm quoting specific gender here. So, one of the persons happened to come to me saying that my girlfriend is kind of acting very weird in the
mm,
sense she expects so many things from me. Uh, and she expects me to pamper her. She expects me to take care of her, and she becomes like a child in front
mm,
of me. And I don't know why is this happening, and I
mm,
don't know how to deal with that.
mm,
Okay. Of course, I didn't get to speak much with his girlfriend. It was just a quick interaction for a couple of minutes.
mm,
But what I could recognize is that she
mm,
felt a deep comfort in him,
mm, mm,
and she had a traumatic childhood.
mm,
Again, when I say traumatic childhood, basically her father was not with her because of his work commitments, and she
mm,
always longed for that kind of warmth from her father.
mm,
Okay. And whenever he would come once in a while, again he would be busy because he's coming only for a few days and he has to finish a lot of things.
mm,
So the girl didn't get the warmth of the father, even when she craved for it, even when he
mm,
was available, he was not really available
mm,
emotionally, right?
mm,
So when she found her boyfriend to be equally comforting, she
mm,
started seeing her father in him.
mm,
Okay. Till then, say from the childhood, she was a very brave lady. She did a lot of things. She achieved a lot of things. She always showed a very high level of resilience in
mm,
herself. I mean, she had crossed a lot of odds. But when she found her boyfriend, who was very, very
mm,
emotionally available and comforting,
mm,
she started feeling or she started seeing him more as a dad than as a
mm,
boyfriend. But that was
mm,
becoming a burden for him. So
mm,
it was a trauma in the childhood. It got suppressed for a quite long time. She went to the college, she built her career, and then she also got a very good occupation in a company, and she was doing very well in her job and at her workplace. She was a brilliant leader. She would
mm,
take up different challenges and deal with them. But when she comes back home, she's a different person altogether because she wanted that comfort and she wanted to relive the childhood which she missed out in her real childhood. So
So
that is where it was becoming.
she was expecting all that from the husband.
Yes. Not even
Mm.
husband. He was still a boyfriend,
Oh, oh.
right? So this was becoming a challenge because the boyfriend does didn't he was still not prepared to see her as a daughter because she's
Mm,
not his daughter,
mm,
and for him she's a girlfriend. So there was a kind of conflict
conflict.
for
Mm,
him
mm,
because she was expecting him to be her father
mm,
and he was expecting her to be his girlfriend. So this is a
mm,
kind of conflict that was happening. So that is how it resurfaces sometimes. Because whenever there is, so the traumatized inner child that was still struggling and suffering or suffocated within her kind of got a space where it could relive whatever it missed out. And that is how the trauma pops up in the adulthood many times.
That's a quite good example. I have another one more example. Let's say uh, there's a girl who growing up in a parenthood house, and often a girl who's growing up in household family will see that parents yelling at each other very often. uh, the parents conflict, the yelling at each other, and the girl who was growing up, let's say for example Maya, okay, she growing up seeing that conflicts, and later she thinks she learned that the love is associated with this conflicts, and that reflected again on at adult age. The kind of relationships or partner when she chooses, might be probably red flag guy, or maybe emotional unavailable men to choosing it. I mean, sometimes even in building relationships with everyone, anything, all of that, I think she was finding herself in a very toxic mode in everything. So now that struggle, that emotional abuse, or maybe that we call it numbness, out of that situation, it was very challenging for her to confront. It was very burstful to confront it. Now, when we talk about on that, these unresolved traumas contribute that sometimes to a depression or maybe some anxiety. I think you touched upon on that a little more with something illustration that these behavior patterns, these changes at adult age, how that can be, work it out, what that one has to do at that point of time because of the some childhood experiences of the family, that sometimes reflects in a different way, like in attracting of the wrong person, maybe at wrong relationships. All of that, it's impacting, it's a coming and reflecting a different behavior pattern. So how that can be addressed, or maybe how the person can come to the self awareness.
I think introspection is the best tool for
Huh.
understanding oneself, because these are the patterns, be it finding a wrong partner or continuing to find a wrong partner. It's like I've seen cases where a person had found a similar kind of people for 3 or 4 times. It was
Hmm.
like she was with the partner, and then she left him and then went to the other person. Then he also turned out to be similar. Then third person, see, it's a similar kind of pattern. Again, this happens with men also finding similar
Hmm.
kind of
Yeah.
girls, right? So it's again, whatever the examples that I'm giving, it is gender neutral. It can
Gender. Yes.
happen
Yes.
for both the genders,
Yes.
right?
Correct. Correct.
So whenever such things happen, one of the things that we really need to look at is, why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
Where is this coming from? And when we start asking these questions, that's when it kind of gives a space for us to introspect. It kind of gives a space to think and see, oh, this is a pattern that I'm carrying, and I don't know
Hmm.
where is it coming from. See, one of the challenges in addressing the traumatized child within us is that we need a facilitator to deal with it. Even when I am a
Hmm.
therapist who is trained in inner child healing, it becomes a little tricky, or sometimes I would say it is not possible to address my inner child for myself, but I need a help support of a facilitator. So that's how this works. So that is why it is always good to keep asking yourself, why am I feeling whatever I'm feeling? In the sense, if you're feeling happy about something, what
Hmm.
makes you happy about it?
Hmm.
If you're feeling sad about something, what makes you sad about it? If you're feeling angry about something, what is making angry about that? Because the same thing can create different emotions in different people, and the
Correct.
same thing need not create the same emotion in same, I mean, different people. In the sense, one thing or one aspect or one situation can create anger in a person, whereas
Hmm.
other person may remain very calm.
Hmm.
What is the reason? It is not the situation in the outer world, it is the situation in the inner world, the triggers that we carry, which create anger in us. So, one of the simplest way to recognize is, if you are feeling something about some outside world,
Hmm.
first thing that you need to look at is what is happening in the inner world. The more
Hmm.
you dig deeper into the inner world, it is easier to find out. So the moment you are finding, or you are meeting similar kind of people in your life, first thing that you need to ask is, what is in me that is attracting the same kind of people? Then why are they coming to me? Right? So that is how I look at life, and that is how I suggest all the people who are in my circle to look at life, so that then it becomes a brilliant world for us to explore our life, and it's a beautiful space to keep exploring. And whenever you see there is a pattern, then it is easy for you to go to the therapist who is expert in inner child healing and get it addressed. So that's how inner child healing works.
That's a wonderful answer, Akshara. I really like the point that you touched upon on self introspection. So I'm coming on the point now. So speaking of this, now 2 points. What we're going to discuss on, one is self introspection, another one is on depression, anxiety. Okay. Uh, See, self-introspection, if somebody is in at anxiety disorder or maybe some depression disorder, going through that stage, it's very challenge for them. It's very challenge for that individual to work out on the self-introspection, because self-introspection will be very weak at that point of time, and that guilt or maybe is that worthless feeling, that will be very, very low at that point of time. One. Second is, uh, we are talking about on anxiety and depression, that emotions. See, depression again, it sometimes it can cause due to several factors behind, maybe the childhood trauma, or maybe inner child is not healed properly, it's unresolved, or maybe sometimes that the too much of triggers often in life, that vulnerability of emotional, it goes to peak, and that's when depression can also come in the stage. So my point is here, on the self introspection depression, like how can someone, uh, the feelings have the crossed when, the from the stress, or maybe from stage of high stressful, much deeper getting to that, how that someone can probably know that, how they know that they need that attention because it's already much gone deeper.
Um, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Specifically, be it introspection or any other tool of basically self-reflective tools, or those tools which we generally use for taking care of our mental health, may not
Hmm.
be useful when you have already flipped, or when you have already slided into a state of anxiety, depression, or so on. I
Hmm.
mean, just like it is, simply speaking, like when we take care of the wheels, or blow in the wheels of the vehicle, when it is just on a maintenance mode, you just need to keep filling the air. But
Hmm.
if it has already got punctured, then you need to fix the puncture and then fill the air.
Hmm.
Correct? Otherwise, how much ever you fill, it will not be enough, or it will not stay inside the car, inside the wheel. So similarly,
Right.
when it comes to mental health, what we need to do is we cannot use the same maintenance tools for addressing the issues like depression, anxiety, and so on. So in such a scenario, it is always better to go to a therapist who is trained to recognize where it all started from, what are the incidents which triggered these emotions, or this sequence of emotions, and then kind of unpeel the uh, wound, whatever it is covering, and then see where it all come from, or where it is all coming from, and then address it. So that is where I say that do self introspection on an everyday basis, so that even if there is any derailment that is happening, you will be able to recognize at the earliest stage than allowing it to derail further, further, further. And at one point of time, when you actually recognize that you have gone out of the track, you
Hmm.
have created so many layers around yourself that it will be difficult for this person himself or herself to recognize where it all started or how to address them. So, in such a scenario, it is better to go to a therapist and unwind oneself.
Wonderful. Thank you so much on that response, Akshara. So, we are speaking of depression and self introspection. Now, during that stage of depression or anxiety disorder, individual will not know what's happening to them. So, it's very a challenge for them to address those symptoms on what's happening physically and psychologically and even biologically or something. So by the time they come to senses or realization, it probably might have crossed 3 months, 4 months, 2 months, or 5 months sometimes. Or sometimes probably might have crossed longer period. Now, question is, the discussion point here is how someone can recognize those symptoms. One. Second is, At what stage they should consult the therapy? When is that the right time to immediately to reach out to the therapy expertise? Akshara, maybe if you could
Yeah.
enlighten more on that.
Definitely. So, yeah, how do we recognize
Hmm.
is the first question, where it may be little difficult for anybody to recognize, because
Yeah.
sometimes it may come just without giving any hint, or
Hmm.
sometimes it may simply pop up even without having any specific difficult situation at hand or in
Correct.
life, right?
Hmm.
So there are incidents where people have gone through depression when they were in the peak of their career, right?
Yeah.
To let me not name them, but some of the celebrities themselves have acknowledged
Hmm.
that they were in the peak of their career, but the depression hit them hard at that time. So,
Hmm.
when can it come, or what could be the reason for it to come, will be
Hmm.
very different for different individuals. So, it's very difficult to generalize to say that, oh, if these are the sequence of events that will happen, then you will go through this.
Correct.
Correct. That is why psychology is beautiful, because of this uncertainty, and it is a kind of exploring things every day. So whenever I sit for a session, it is like an exam for me, because
Hmm.
neither client nor me know what is the answer for the question that we are trying to explore and understand. Right.
Right.
So that's fun, and it is also the challenge for the therapist. So yes, maybe people would find it difficult to recognize, but some of the simple symptoms that one can recognize are, see, if you start disliking the company of people in general, not
Hmm.
some
Hmm.
specific people, in general, and you are not liking the company of people in general, whom you
Hmm.
would have liked otherwise,
Hmm.
can be one kind of symptom where the person is slowly withdrawing himself or herself from the society.
Hmm.
Okay, that is one symptom. Or
Hmm.
if you start liking dark areas or dark
Hmm.
spaces for yourself
Hmm.
than a brighter space. Like, if you would like to spend more time in your room by closing all the windows and then putting a very thick curtain to the window so that no light can enter your room, and you would like to stay in that kind of a room all the time or longer duration of time, even during the day, you do not want to see the light, can
Hmm.
be another kind of symptom which can make a person to think, is it a symptom of depression? Again, I'm not
Hmm.
saying that that is the only symptom of depression. That could be one of the symptoms of depression, right?
Hmm.
And if the person has a sequence of negative thoughts,
Hmm.
that can also can become a kind of hint for the person to think if that is leading to depression, right?
Um.
And there could be other symptoms, like if a person doesn't want to wake up,
Hmm.
again, not like regularly. Most of the
Hmm.
people today do not want to wake up early in the morning. That's not
Hmm.
a case of depression.
Yeah.
But even once a person has completed the sleep, still the
Hmm.
person doesn't want to wake up. There is a lethargy, or there is a kind of burdened feeling.
They feel like
Yes,
sleeping
they
for a
feel like
whole
sleeping
day.
for
Yeah.
whole day. They feel very heavy in their head. They feel
Hmm.
very heavy in their body. Yes. So that can become a symptom. That can be a symptom for depression. Or even
Hmm.
if they lose interest in eating on time,
Hmm.
eating whatever the dishes that they otherwise would have liked.
Sorry, pausing you here. I hear also that some people in the depression phase, they also eat more. Is it true?
That is also true. They may, person may stop or reduce eating or overeat also. Correct?
Okay.
It is both. With regard to sleep and eating, it can
Hmm.
be either of the way. Either too much of
Uh-huh.
sleeping or not sleeping
Hmm.
at all. Both
Hmm.
can be symptoms of depression.
Hmm.
Similarly, not eating at all or too much of eating can also be a symptom of depression. Again,
Hmm.
whenever we look at any disorder, one caution that I would like to say is, we as therapists are trained to recognize if it is a symptom of any disorder per se,
Correct.
because otherwise whatever I quoted right now can
Mm.
happen in a person's regular life one
Mm.
or other day. Maybe you
Mm.
don't feel like eating the idli that you really loved eating, right?
Mm.
That doesn't mean that you are falling into depression. It may be a day's thing.
Yeah.
Whenever we have or whenever we see these repeated patterns and whenever we
Mm.
see a combination of things, that's
Mm.
when the trained therapists are able to recognize what it could be. And
Mm.
we have our manuals where we compare the different symptoms and see the possibilities of different disorders, because there are a lot of disorders which are overlapping in themselves. So
Mm.
I would generally suggest, and I'm somebody who is a therapist who doesn't label anybody with any disorder. So people
Mm.
ask me, or sometimes again, this is because of the Google. Many people come and tell me I have 60% depression, I have 70% depression, I have 40% depression. Where is this percentage coming from? This is coming
Yeah.
from the tests that are available in Google, right? So I am somebody who doesn't label them anything. I just say,
Mm.
okay, this is a condition that you have, and these are the treatments that we need to do so that you will
Mm.
be able to come out of it. Okay. So, so the second question that you asked, when to approach a therapist? What is the right time to reach out to a therapist? Earlier the better, because the more you take time, it will
Mm.
become more complicated.
More complicated, yeah.
But hard truth in our life as
Mm.
therapists is most of the people reach out to us only when they are in the cliff. Like either they
Mm.
have to jump or somebody has to save them.
Somebody,
So that is the time when they reach out to a therapist saying, do something to me.
mm.
Instead of that, if they reach out to us much in advance, then a lot of things could be solved within lesser number of sessions, which can unnecessarily take more number of sessions, not just in terms of number of sessions, it is also in terms of number of hours, number of time, or number of weeks that it will take, and
Mm.
the recovery phase. So it will kind of add up. It becomes a kind of a snowball effect
Got it.
there. So always, whenever you see that something is not really right with you, of course, everyone wants to try by themselves. Everyone wants to try healing themselves, try coping themselves. All great. That is not bad or that is not wrong. But it is always good to recognize if it is curable or treatable or healable by yourself, or you need the support of a therapist as quickly as early as possible, so that you can simply take the support and come out of it. And one should be open to take therapy, because it is
Mm.
not bad to seek support from somebody
Mm.
else. Just like we have taken support of our parents when we started walking on our own feet,
Mm.
or if not parents, maybe other elders, right?
Mm.
So similarly, in our life, we are, as human beings, we live in a collective space.
Right.
Be it, I mean, there is nobody who is independent of others. Like
Correct.
if I'm living alone, it doesn't
Mm.
mean that I am self-sufficient, because
Mm.
whoever is growing, I mean, the farmer who is growing rice in the field is also
Mm.
contributing to my life. If that farmer doesn't exist, then maybe I will not have rice to eat today.
Right.
Correct? So the supply chain persons who are involved in carrying those things and making that to reach home are
Mm.
also contributing to my life. So none of us are independent of each other. So we are a collective entity, and it is always better to seek support from others, and especially if it is from a professional. That is when we can get better at a faster pace.
Wonderful, very thought-provoking, Akshara. Thank you so much. I have something to discuss with you on the workplace settings as well. I have one question on that. So you mentioned the childhood traumas and that unresolved things and wounds, pains, triggers, all of that, that whatever we carry, sometimes it also might reflect in workplace as well. There, I have two questions on this workplace settings part. So one is how someone unresolved trauma or inner child wounds that impacts on the behavior that we talked about. You gave one example on a leader, but still, see, sometimes let's say an individual who did not have much of the trauma, he or she might have probably wounded pretty good and moved on in career, and there's another trauma that probably might carry from the workplace setting. Maybe that abusing, or maybe the toxicity in teamwork, maybe in the culture, maybe in the organization. So those are can be the addition for the trauma. Okay, so those whatever the bad experiences that someone go through in workplace setting, that can be a new trauma addition to the life, and uh, that probably that links between both employees and leaders both. So what one should do to come out of that trauma of the workplace settings, I think, does it have to leave it to the time to heal, or what do you suggest, what's your perception on that? Or sometimes, like, leaders might probably abuse the team members because of their childhood trauma, or maybe their past experiences, or maybe the past life they brought up life, that might probably hindering their team members. Or sometimes employees also might probably have gone through some hardships, maybe that too much of triggering in life, that probably reflecting in a different pattern in the workplace. So there's something, what do you have to talk about on that, how we can probably one can to work out on that?
See, as I said, workplace can also create a trauma. And more importantly, again, when we look at inner child, right, like I said earlier, it is not restricted to any age. Whatever happened
Yeah.
yesterday can be an inner child for me today, right? So as we grow older, doesn't mean that we are not going to have any traumatic situation in our life. So when it comes to workplace,
Hmm.
again, workplace itself can be toxic,
Hmm.
correct? Because of one or two persons, or it could be because of the systemic issue and many other
Hmm.
things.
Hmm.
Now, the experience that you get because of a specific person in the
Hmm.
workplace or a group of people, it
Hmm.
can create a trauma in you, and it can
Hmm.
also create a behavioral pattern or emotional pattern in you.
Hmm.
Just to give you an example, there was a leader who
Hmm.
was resisting to make any decisions,
Hmm.
and the company was suffering
Hmm.
because of that. The members in the team were suffering because of that. Because, see,
Hmm.
the leader has to ultimately make the decision and sign the documents or sign the
Hmm.
check, and he would
Hmm.
not do it. The
Yeah.
reason, there was a fear to make a decision and to
Uh,
own the responsibility for the decision that he has made,
okay.
because he was seeking for support. So when he
Uh,
was a team leader, he had a
hmm.
boss who
Uh,
would take ownership for that decision that he was making. And suddenly he was bypassed 2, 3 stages, and suddenly he
hmm.
was made the country head.
Hmm.
Now there was no super boss or immediate boss to handhold to for making decisions, and he
Hmm.
had to make on his own. And he
Hmm.
was dead scared because he lacked support, or he
Hmm.
felt that there is no support available, and
Hmm.
every decisions, I mean, the responsibility of each decision that he would make will come
Hmm.
on him,
Hmm.
right? So that is where it was becoming very challenging for the other employees, because they want the things to move and this fellow doesn't take a decision,
Hmm.
right? So leaders can go through such things. That's why I always say leaders are alone, and sometimes they also feel lonely within
Hmm.
those beautiful, luxurious chambers where people think that what a wonderful life that he or she might be leading, but they will be experiencing the fire, they will be experiencing the thorns on their path or on their seat, which they will have to bear with, right? So workplace can have its own traumatic situations. Even kind of talking from an employee's perspective, if a boss is extremely abusive,
Hmm.
the person may start believing that all bosses are like this.
That will become
Ha,
proclivity of human.
yeah. So even when they go to other places, they will have a tendency to say all bosses are like this, all bosses
Hmm.
are bad, all bosses are rude. Even when there is a very empathetic boss, still this person will start kind of see there is some hidden agenda because of which he is showing some love, care, and affection. Otherwise, he is a rude boss. Otherwise,
Mm.
he's having some hidden agenda behind whatever he's doing. So this is a kind of meaning that the person has created because of a incident or series
Mm.
of incidents that he or she might have gone through, right? So it is definitely true that
Mm.
our experiences can create different meanings, different trauma, different baggage, and that can become a kind of impediment in the growth of that specific person, irrespective of their position. So it is always good for them to address their own emotional baggage so that they can really thrive towards better growth, better position, better salary, or better living standards, whatever they want.
I would like to add another point on this. So, in organizations, usually now, I think in the last couple of years post COVID, most of the organizations, matured organizations, I can say, they have implemented a policy of or implemented a new perk benefit of psychological counseling services to employees. Now, when we're talking about on this service, there's a myth going on, which I want to address on that. So employees feel that they have the benefit of organization in psychological counseling, but inputs and the data information probably might get disclosed between the corporate leaders and to the third party psychological counseling team vendors. So but actually, I'll tell you about this. No. So there's a case to case basis that if there is any severity or any extreme cases of somebody going through a several severe depression or anything that's a peak of level of the disorder, then those things will be addressed from which department and which member, and will be taken up separately individually without disclosing to anyone, to support in terms of the mental health support, to take their time off from the workplace so that they can heal themselves and can come back. So this is one. Second is this will be very confidential in a workplace, because these are very very personal matters will be discussed between the employees and the psychological therapy session expertise. So this information would not be disclosed at all at any cost. This is ethical procedure of the therapist. So this is something I want to add on to the point, because due to that myth, that misunderstanding of the people, that probably both team members will disclose, and probably that might probably affect on my work or maybe affect on my job. So that fear might probably create in the mindset. So what do you have,
Yeah,
Akshara, like have you come across such?
yeah. I mean, definitely, the points are very valid, and in fact, it is true that a lot of people are worried about their confidentiality, privacy. More, along with that, the moment they are reaching out to a therapist, they also feel that maybe the other people will start thinking that I'm weak.
Mm,
Correct. So that is also another resisting factor why they're not reaching out to therapists,
correct.
which are availed by the companies. But I would like to add one more thing to this.
Mm,
This is one thing that a lot of corporates are doing in a wrong way.
mm,
That is, even in fact, for that matter, even government has done the same mistake in the name
mhm,
of National Mental Health Program. Similarly, in the current time, most of the organizations are doing this mistake. That is, that just by making a counseling service available to the employee, you're not really taking care of the mental health at large.
mm,
In fact, I often tell the HRs whom I meet,
mm,
it is not enough to provide individual counseling services
mm.
because sometimes it could be a systemic issue that needs to be addressed.
Correct.
For example, if I am getting traumatized because of
Mm,
my boss,
mm,
how much ever I go to the therapist, unless I
mm,
fix my boss or I
mm,
fix the conflict between me and my boss, it is not going to resolve my problem. The
true.
therapist may be able to give a temporary support or
Mm.
temporary solution,
Solution.
but it will keep popping up in different scenarios.
If it's
So that is
not
where I
fixed it
focus
properly.
on the, huh?
If it's not fixed properly on the
Right.
problematic situation.
That is why I always say that mental health has to be taken at systemic levels and not just at
Mm,
individual levels.
got it.
So, always, I recommend the organizations to go for mental health based trainings
Mm,
where people talk their heart out, people
mm,
break the prejudices
correct.
or
Yes.
negative attitudes that they carry towards each other, and break those barriers, hesitations, etc., etc., that they have, and also bring the real truth that they have been carrying in their life into the
Mm,
space, resolve it then and there, and then see how the whole workplace changes. So, I always say mental health is not just individualistic, it is an ecosystem based approach that we have to go for. So, that's why,
absolutely.
as a
Mm,
therapist, I work with individuals, but at the same time, I work with organizations at group level,
mm.
because it is not because I have to reach more number of people, but it is because when we work at systemic level, that is when things really change for everyone in the system. Otherwise, if
You
you're,
do
yeah,
you take separate sessions for the leaders too, or you do it all together between including of employees and the leaders? What
it
is your
depends
approach on
on
that?
the organization and organizational hierarchy and so on. For example, in some of the organizations, I expect the leaders to stay away from these kind of trainings because
Mm.
the employees will not even open up
Will
whatever
not
they want to
correct.
share
Mm.
because the leader is there, or they will start becoming pleasers to the leader instead of talking the real truth.
Correct.
But in some organizations, I allow the leaders to be there wherever I see a horizontal hierarchy, where there is no specific
Mm.
vertical hierarchical system. That's when I allow the
Correct.
leaders also to be there so that they
Mm.
understand the real picture in the real time, and they can also show their vulnerability as leaders, and the other members in the organization can understand what a leader is going through, because generally the people in the lower hierarchy think that leader is imposing a lot of pressure on them, but they do
Correct.
not understand. Probably the leader is also going through a lot of pressure himself or
True.
herself,
Mm.
right? So it is always looking at systems. So including the leader or not including the leader
That
depends
depends on
on
our.
what kind of system that I'm going to work with. But of course, I do give a brief to the leader in terms
Mm.
of what are the inputs that I could gather from the session that he
Mm.
or she can use on a regular basis, so that the whole system gets better in the long run.
Wonderful. That's very thoughtful, Akshara. That wonderful approach on that. Akshara, I want to discuss on further to the point that if someone new to this on disorder stages or maybe anything, any traumatic stages that anybody new to that stage, new to that steps, what is the one first step would be safe? The first safe step by someone can take toward on the healing. What would be that?
Um, so again, I mean, this is not the, I mean, my idea is not to promote my course, but I have come up with a course, very interesting
Hmm.
one,
Hmm.
called Mental Wellbeing Mastery.
Hmm.
The reason why I came out with this course is, see, when it comes to physical health, you have
Hmm.
different metrics or measures to understand how are you doing in terms of your physical health. It can
Correct.
be 10,000 steps per day, or it
Hmm.
could be 1 hour of yoga or gym, etc.,
Hmm.
etc. Right?
Hmm.
But when it comes to mental health, there is no
Hmm.
metric as such. Of
Hmm.
course, some of the digital devices are looking at your stress level and other things, but you
Hmm.
really do not know if that is accurate. And
Hmm.
it is, I mean, mental health is not just about your stress. There are so many
Hmm.
other things that are involved.
Hmm.
So that is where I came up with this course, which talks about different tools and techniques that one can adopt on a day-to-day basis, which will not take more
Hmm.
than 10 to 15 minutes a day, so
Hmm.
that they can utilize those tools regularly and ensure that they are not becoming victims, or they are not getting into severe mental health issues by and large. Okay, again, there could be still a situation where a person can fall into a disorder mode because of various reasons, but that kind of becomes a tool that prevents a lot of possible issues. And most of the times when I interact with people, I get to hear that practicing meditation is the best way to prevent mental health issues. I
Hmm.
agree. But my question is, how many of us are having the time or doing it diligently, regularly, to ensure that we are taking care of our mental health? How many of us are practicing meditation? And again, many people say, I practice 5 minutes of meditation, 10 minutes of meditation, which is not correct, because meditation doesn't happen based on the time. You have to sit
Hmm.
for it, and you will get into that meditative state, and then you will come out of it. So it can take its own time. Sometimes it may happen in 10 minutes also, but need not be. Correct? So that is where
Hmm.
my course gives steps so that they are very, very clear. And even if they are falling into some disorders or any kind of challenges, they will be in a position to recognize those issues at the earlier stage and seek support from the therapist as early or as quickly as possible.
Got it. Very nice.
That will
Um, uh,
make the life much easier for everyone to take care of themselves.
Got it. I think we talked about that's very good input, Sakshara. Thank you so much. Um, I think meditation can help in terms of improving our mental health, yes. But what I want to discuss with you is that how can individuals see usually this trauma, let's say example in the parents. So in the parents, the trauma, the baggage should be carrying from the legendary and from the silent boomer, and it carries to the baby boomer, right? And then it carries to the next of millennials, and then it carries to the next of the Gen Z. So these baggages, this trauma, you know, cycle, to prevent that, somewhere that break that chain. So how can that individual prevent that? How one can probably break that chain, Akshara? Maybe if that some
So you're
enlightenment on that
basically
would be
talking
much.
about generational trauma.
Generational trauma, generational cycle of the trauma. Yes.
Yeah. So again, I think it has to start from ourselves. So if we get into a space where we would like to address the trauma that we have been carrying for generations, that is when we can prevent from ourselves from transferring it to the next generation.
True.
And if you have already become a parent and you have already transferred, or you feel that you have already transferred some of the trauma that you carry to a child,
Hmm.
then maybe you address it first, and then maybe when the child is ready for a therapy, you can get the therapy done for the child as well, so that it is taken out or the trauma is removed from that
Hmm.
generation as well.
Hmm.
So it has to be worked at every generation, whichever the sequence that we are looking at,
Hmm.
and then only it can go away from the whole sequence or the generational tree that we are looking at.
Hmm.
So I think we as individuals are the first initiators that we can take up for ourselves, so that we are closing the continued trauma that we are carrying for generations together in our life, so that it doesn't go to the next generation.
See, why am I talking about? Thank you so much. That's very good inputs. Why am I touching upon this point is that now Gen Z Alpha generations mindsets are very different from the generation to millennials or X or before that. So how someone probably can millennials parents or maybe the baby boomer parents, how they can put effort in terms of understanding of the Gen Z mindset, Akshara, what they can do about on that to reduce that conflict or maybe reduce of that misunderstanding in
See,
communication or
again, very
anything.
interesting
Hmm.
question, because what I'm seeing is there is a lot of generational difference or
Hmm.
generational shift between the older generation and the new generation, whatever we call Gen Z, Gen Alpha, whatever
Uh,
the nomenclature that we use. So, when it comes to these kind of issues between the generations, what I would always suggest is, see, one thing that we all need to understand is the newer generation may not understand the language that you understood in your childhood.
Hmm.
But one of the major challenges is we are using the same language, same exercises, or same modalities and forcing the younger generation to follow. That is where
Hmm.
we are miserably failing. We need to
True.
innovate newer ways for them to understand, realize the importance of what you are saying and why you are saying. If that is done, then definitely they will be open to follow. Recently, I spoke to a young girl who is 8 or 9 years old, and I asked her in a certain way, and she said, see, if you ask me like this, I am okay to follow whatever you ask me to do.
Hmm.
But if you force me or if you insist me on doing something, then I will resist to doing it.
Hmm.
So that is the mindset of this generation. So it is all about if you convey to them in the right way, they will understand it and probably they will also reciprocate. So first thing is that we need to do as people belonging to the older generation is we need to change our language, the way we communicate to the younger generation. That's when we can get the things done from them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Akshara. So I think I think we have covered most of all the points. I have one thing interesting question on that. If there are many people going through a lot today in this generation, physically or mentally, emotionally, so what would be that one uh, let's say you if you could share one message that would probably feels somebody that feels better, heals better, maybe with one of your message, so what would be that probably helps a lot for the broken, feels that broken from the inside for the people, so what would be that one message?
Sure. I mean, I am reminded of my statement that I was making yesterday to my students at PES University, where I teach psychology for the performing arts department. So I was talking about one of the Navarasas called Veera Rasa. Okay.
Hmm.
Generally, people consider Veera Rasa as something that we talk about courage.
Hmm.
Correct. So my explanation to them was, again, this is something that I learned from my guru, that the idea of courage is not to hide your vulnerability and showcase yourself as a very strong individual to the world. The real courage is to show your vulnerability to the world and still face them. So,
Wonderful.
whoever is going through the challenges in their life, be courageous to acknowledge that you have challenges in your life and still face the world and take support from the professionals. That is when you can really turn around your life to a better one. There is nobody who is not going through any challenge in their life, whether you're poor, whether you're rich, whether you're in better region or I mean underprivileged region. Irrespective of wherever you are, you have a challenge in your life. So it is always good to acknowledge your vulnerability and face the world. That's when you will be really courageous, because it takes a lot of courage to acknowledge your vulnerability and still face the world.
Wow, that's very, amazing thought, Akshara. Thank you so much. So one last point, sorry. So if someone has to seek professional therapist help, how do they choose the right therapist? See, there are so many therapists today in the world. So how to choose the right one, right therapist? What do you say about on that?
Again, that's a difficult question to answer, because every therapist will have their own style of dealing with their clients.
Hmm.
And unless you go to them and look at their way of working, it will be difficult to understand their modalities and whether it is suitable for you. Because
Hmm.
maybe the therapist is really talented, really skilled, but that modality is not suitable for you. That can also
Hmm.
happen. So it is not appropriate to simply blame the therapist or say accuse the therapist for not being skilled. So it is always better first talk to the therapist, talk about your issues and see how they reciprocate, how do they respond, what are their modalities, understand their techniques that they are good at, and accordingly you can choose a therapist. So it can be kind of trial and error method to begin with, but at large I'm sure everyone kind of understands the vibe of a therapist, with the initial conversations itself. So based on that, probably it is better to choose a therapist, because maybe every therapist have come with their own skill, but it may not be workable to every client.
True, absolutely. That's a wonderful suggestions, very good inputs, Akshara. Yes, Akshara, I think the conversation what we had today, very insightful, very thought-provoking, profound and heart-opening conversations, very helpful. I think you really added that inputs to my podcast, also to me and to my audience and to my viewers as well. Uh, I think all these information, all these inputs and solutions on the psychology and on our trauma points that we have covered, very great, very helpful. I know it's monumental and ceaseless too, but we had to end this conversations for now. Very big thank you to you for sharing such a deep wisdom and also enlighten on many key elements on this topic, trauma and inner child healing.
Thank you so much to you too. Thank you.
Thank you, Akshara. So, all my viewers, all my listeners, all my audience, so remember this: healing doesn't happen just in a moment or just in a day, it doesn't happen in a overnight. So, but awareness is a first step for a healing. So, if today's episode resonated with you, don't ignore that feeling, reflect it, and share with someone you trust, and know that you're not alone. If this episode touched you, you know what you can do next, right? So please subscribe my channel, subscribe my PodTalk, and so that you don't miss out on my next coming episodes with interesting contents and with interesting guests. So leave a review. It helps more people to find these conversations, and this will be very helpful. I'll tell you, so we are all going through one or the other things in life, and it's absolutely, you're not alone there. That's what I'm saying. So we're all on the same journey. So if you comment, if you share your review on the comment box, trust me, this will definitely help the right person that who's going through, who probably feels a broken, might probably definitely would be very helpful and reach the person to heal better. Maybe it can probably help them to avoid any bad step in taking it. So please comment and leave a review in the comment box. That's really helpful. And share this episode with someone who you think that might really need it today. So please do this, and it's very critical. And stay tuned for my next episode 7. Till then, you have to take care of yourself, because healing starts within and by taking care of yourself. So take care. We'll catch up again. Thank you.